Hey you! Yeah, you! Spoiler warning for Act 1 of Arcane Season 2. I will be talking completely and totally about the spoilers of Act 1 and of stuff from the first season, so if you haven't seen Arcane, go watch it. It's amazing. This video is more for me to express my feelings on where the story's going so far with the second and final season of the series, and I can't wait to jump into it. So, spoiler warning, you've been warned. Stay tuned if you're interested in that. I still stand by my sentiment that Arcane is actually like the best thing that Netflix has ever done. I really think it's amazing how they've done a great job of taking something that's such a complicated series like League of Legends and, make it into this big, grandiose, amazing animated spectacle that really stands the test of time and is really great even if you aren't a League of Legends fan. You can really fall in love with Arcane knowing nothing about the game and its world. It does a great job of slowly moving people in and introducing them to the rules of Piltover, Zaun, and all these different interesting places. So obviously, being a League fan and also loving the show, I was super excited for Season 2, and I have to say it's off to a great start. I loved Act 1. I have some minor grievances with it, which I'll get into in the latter half of the video, and less grievances and more nitpicks is probably a better way to say it, but I'm definitely interested and definitely super excited to see everything they're going to do. So without further ado, let's jump into it. I really appreciate the in medias res opening, similar to something like Incredibles 2, for example, where no time has passed. We are jumping right in at what happened last time, waking up with Jace in the dust after Jinx had shot Fishbones into the council parliament, killing, now that we've learned, multiple councilmen, including Caitlyn's mother, which is a huge, huge pushing point for this season, by the way. That's totally the motivating factor that pushes Caitlyn to the edge and makes her this sort of gridded leader that she eventually truly becomes literally the leader of martial law of the city at the end of Act 1. I was also shocked to see how quickly we jumped into the Victor stuff. I figured the Victor stuff would be end of Season 2, left mostly open, because getting into the Mechanicus or not Mechanicus, that's Warhammer, whoops. Getting into the stuff about Victor being the Machine Herald and his sort of connection to the cosmic entities beyond and this, grander scheme of League of Legends storytelling was always something that I figured they would touch on in Arcane, and obviously they were going to do it with the Season 2 trailer showing off some of the more mystical sides of League and its lore. And it had always been there in Season 1, with Jace's mother being saved and his inspiration to tap into magic itself. But I personally was shocked how much of it they're doing, and I guess you could say that's also where my grievances lie, in a sense, is not that I'm against it, but some of those grandiose ideas are a lot, and so I was amazed that we got into the Victor stuff almost immediately, with him being put into this sort of shell, and then, eventually later in the season, or in the Act 1 of Season 2, coming out of the shell and being, like a Doctor Doom-esque character with his body all meddled up and stuff. Or Doctor Doom from the movies, I should say. It's not the way he is in the comics. Now, I'm not against how they're doing Victor either. I want to make that very clear. I actually really like the idea of making him this sort of idealist, prophetic figure who heals people. And eventually leading to him kind of rising up his own little army, or at least if they go with that style of lore that was known from Victor in the game. But I definitely think they're setting it up in a way that people will find interesting, and not just kind of shoving him off this cliff of, like, quote-unquote villainhood, if you will. I find that really interesting, and I'm super excited to see how they do that, because I definitely think it's a lot more of a promising character arc for Victor than doing the traditional League story for him would be. Speaking of things from the traditional League story being changed, is that kid Teemo? It's gotta be, right? Or at least honorary Teemo, right? Like, I'm kind of blown away. Like, is that kid Teemo? I mean, I know they show Teemo on the arcade machine and that he's sort of this, like, mythological figure almost, or, like, I guess, fantasy figure in the world of League, but I don't know, it kind of blew my mind. I was like, is that kid supposed to be Teemo? He definitely gives off the energy. Scout's honor, man. It's kind of crazy. I was super shocked by it. I love the dynamic between the kid. I'm forgetting their name, but the kid and Jinx's dynamic of Jinx sort of walking them around and them being the silent sort of just inquisical, looking around, childlike character. It's a nice dynamic. It balances out Jinx's crazy really, really well, especially since they've shoved Jinx off the edge now of, was she sympathetic crazy? Was she, mentally ill? What's going to happen with her? No, after the Fishbones incident, she is just homicidal crazy now. Obviously, there's still some sympathy you have because this whole thing is just such a mess, but she has gone into full villain, kill everybody mode, kind of, to an extent. And it's, follow Jinx in the underground or, get shot, literally. I will say I do love the dynamic between Savika and Jinx this season. That is probably like one of my favorite things that they've done this season. Is it makes sense that, these two, quote, sisters, if you would, under Silco, come together now in his death. You know, they both cared about him for different reasons, and it would make sense that two characters that were opposed because they fought for his affection to an extent, or at least his attention, now come together in the wake of losing him. Even though he was a villainous character, he was their father figure to an extent, especially considering Jinx lost Vander so young. And you fall into this sort of situation of, you know, tragedy brings people together. And I love their dynamic of, you know, Jinx giving Savika that new jackpot arm. That whole sequence where she fights the rat dude, I can't remember his name, who has like all the crazy blades on his body and stuff. That fight scene where she's using the like jackpot slot machine arm, oh, it's so cool. Like, the animation is so good. It's so good. And it's just so stylish. I just found myself like jaw agape the whole time I was watching that scene. And obviously, you know, the jackpot scenario and the arm just completely crushing him and eating him up, and it throwing the bits and pieces, and, you know, Jinx and the Teemo-esque character just being like, ooh, it was like perfect slapstick comedy mixed with this kind of twisted mechanical monstrosity of an arm and sort of monstrosity of a mindset that Jinx has, that sort of mad scientist evil person. She's pushing that narrative forward even more this season, and it's one of my favorite parts of Jinx is that she's not just this Harley Quinn-esque kind of, you know, crazy girl character. She's also a genius and an incredible inventor, and I like that they lean into that side of her character more. I think that's really cool, and they should do that more, so I'm glad we're getting more of it. Before I move off talking about the characters from Zaun, you know, Jinx and Savika and all of them, I do want to mention Singed, and what I guess we're moving towards is Warwick. I can't imagine it's not Warwick. It looks just like him at the end of Act 1, and I'm assuming it's going to be, or at least, okay, huge spoilers for the rest of the series, I guess, but there's no confirmation of it. Or there might be confirmation of this, actually, if you go and look at the leaks. I haven't seen the leaks. So definitely, you know, avoid those from when the Netflix leak happened. But I'm going to assume Warwick is Vander, and it's his body that's being used to put Warwick together. And I think that that's going to be a great dynamic, and that could really affect Vi and Jinx maybe reuniting, but I almost don't see how that could possibly happen with Vi and Jinx being so drastically torn apart at this point. Although anything is possible. But I definitely think using Warwick as this monstrosity of Zaun, of the underground, this, you know, kind of demon that hunts people in the woods, this actual, you know, American werewolf in London, if you will, you know, killing people, and it bringing them together of, hey, you know, we want to fight each other, but this monster must be stopped. I can see that being a great plot through line as well. But that's just enough of talking about the Zaun stuff. We got a lot to talk about with Piltover, so let's just jump right into that, especially since more of that has been presented in this first half. I hope I'm saying her name right, but Ambressa, the warlord woman, I think it might be actually Ambressa, I don't remember, but you know who I'm talking about. I'll have a footage of her on screen as I'm talking to make sure it's clear. But she's an incredible character. Obviously, she just got added to League as a playable character, which is great. I love her design so much. Her being this sort of conniving warlord is amazing, and the way she is manipulating the elite of Piltover in this first half of the season is, or first third, I should say, amazing. Absolutely love it. And I love her dynamic with Mel, with everybody else sort of trusting her for her wartime prestige, but Mel knowing as her mother, you know, that she can't trust her and that she can't, you know, look to her mom and say, oh, you know, you're not actually doing what everyone thinks you are. You're manipulating people. You're, you know, using them to an extent. And I find that super interesting to see this dynamic of Mel is a part of the council, but she's the only one that's in on what's actually happening. But now she's not even there to stop any of the craziness, because I'm going to assume, I'm going to step out on a limb here as I am with Warwick for the Zaun stuff, but I'm going to assume the witch and mage who is affecting Ambressa's goals and also, you know, manipulating Piltover's elite is Zyra. I see those thorns and the flowers and stuff. It's got to be Zyra, right? Like, am I insane? I guess I could be. But I really feel like that must be hinting at Zyra, or at least some sort of mage character that Zyra is involved with or Zyra is working for. Maybe like Swain or Vladimir or something like that. I'm not super well with League lore. I know more the grander strokes of League lore and not specifics of who works with who. I just know, you know, nations people are from, etc. And so I'm going to go out on a limb and just assume that's Zyra. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. I haven't read a lot of theories about what people think it is, but please no spoilers, like direct, like, oh, hey, here's a link to the leaks. Don't do that. But I do find it super interesting to see where it's going to go and what's going to happen, because I definitely wasn't expecting Zyra in this season. And I think it's a great move to bring in that sort of outside force that's pushing our characters to be, you know, to manipulate and need to take power because, Embrace's standing in the world is falling, so she needs Piltover to sort of get her standing back, and so she can fight back against these people who want things from her son. And I found that super interesting, or killed her son, rather, and now she owes them. And then on top of that, we're dealing with, as I mentioned at the start of the video, Caitlyn becoming sort of a, I don't want to say Anakin Skywalker, that's a really bad example, but I'm going to use it, sort of getting consumed by her rage to avenge her mother, that she's willing to do anything. That scene between, Vi and Caitlyn, where obviously their romance is finally blooming and their relationship is kind of coming together, only to immediately be torn apart by the fact that Vi can't believe Caitlyn was willing to shoot through our Teemo child to kill Jinx. She was like, how could you do that? And stopped her. And obviously that brought Vi and Caitlyn apart, and also split up their sort of tag team, assault group that went underground to stop them. I'm not sure if that assault group is supposed to be other characters. I know the guy's a big shield, but he doesn't look like Braum, so I'm going to assume he's not Braum. But, I mean, anything could be possible, I guess. But, their attack squad sort of gets broken up, and then it's only immediately followed by Jinx, attacking Piltover and having her giant, color bombs go off and scare people. I find that super interesting. And then on top of that, obviously, this is where I'll really jump into my sort of worries, I'll say. Not grievances, I actually really like this part of the story, but I'll say my worries is with Jace, Echo, and Heimerdinger, which is also connected to Victor, as I mentioned earlier, which is the idea of the arcane, cosmic energy, and power, multiple dimensions. They're going into a Spider-Verse style sort of thing, but they're doing it really fast in that arc, and I'm really worried about where they're going to take that. League, in its broader strokes, has a lot of themes of, cosmic entities battling, and that we are their puppets, which maybe to an extent is kind of an ironic sort of you control your character kind of nod within the lore. And so it does these grandiose characters that, manipulate the world, and then these other characters, act within their greater will, and then pull themselves together, for their own ideals, but really all of it's being manipulated by these bigger players in the background that they're all serving, whether it be the gods or cosmic beings, all that sort of stuff, with certain characters being kind of elites that lead these groups of people who are directly connected to these bigger beings. And that's a lot. We approach Lord of the Rings levels of lore and lots of content, and I find myself worried that they'll lose their casual audience if they let too much of that lap up the story. Arcane was really good because it gave League players everything they would want, but then on top of it, made the show accessible for those who aren't players. And I worry that leaning into the cosmic aspects of League's lore could push away the casual viewer. They'll find themselves lost. But also, if you play your cards right, it'll keep them really interested. So I hope that they kind of pepper it through appropriately and maybe have some big moments towards the end of the series, but overall, I find myself on edge in a good and slightly bad way, where I hope that please don't overdo it, because you could easily overdo it. You have more animation budget. People love the first season. You won a bunch of Emmys. You're a very successful series. Don't lose touch with what made season 1 so great. And I don't think they have. I think they've done a great job of keeping that interesting story dynamic going while adding, nice nods to the League lore, even though they're willing to do bigger nods than they were before. And I think that's fine. But I don't know. I don't want them to lose their casual audience. I think that's what makes Arcane so good as a piece of art. Also, before I wrap up, I do want to shout out the neat little reference to Jaina, being this, giant wind goddess who held back the winds underground, whether that being a literal representation, as in Jaina did seal that away long ago, or just a nod to her being the wind goddess in League of Legends lore. And, kind of in the same way that the kid is a reference to Teemo. I'm forgetting that kid's name. It's going to kill me that I can't remember it. But yeah, overall, super interested and love that little stuff. And I'm really curious to see where we go in the future with how this all eventually wraps together. We've got 3 sort of distinct storylines going on. We've got Caitlyn and Vi, Jinx and Savika, and, Teemo, and Jace, Echo, and Heimerdinger, all kind of coming together to unite this sort of storyline. And I can't wait for the moment that all 3 of them cross together, because Jace, Echo, and Heimerdinger are caught in what I can only assume is the literal cosmic void right now, because they touched that giant orb of hex magic, And Victor is assembling his sort of crew in that same vein of he has been formed with the Hex Core and is now, you know, a being empowered by the will of the cosmos to an extent, if you will. And then on the side, we've got Vi and Jinx's relationship crumbling just as it starts. How unfortunate. Because of, you know, this idealism of what does it mean to be a hero. And then on the exact flip side, we have Jinx deciding to give into her wrath and realize that she should lead a revolution to an extent against Piltover. That she decides, no, the healthy way is to just kill my family because I just can't handle everything this is going through. Very interesting. Definitely wasn't ready for that, but great start to the series. Loved Act 1. I hope Act 2 can carry the weight and keep it going forward. And I'm super excited for this Saturday to see Act 2. So, what did you think of Arcane Season 2, Act 1? Let me know in the comments down below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. All of those things help a lot. And especially leave a comment. YouTube seems to really love pushing videos that have gotten comments and get interaction in the comments. That seems to be a huge part of, you know, what makes my videos do well. So if you enjoyed this, leave a comment below saying how much you loved it. It really, really helps out. I try to respond to all of them. So yeah, so much love, everyone. Take care, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Stay awesome, everybody. Bye.
Does it take to get you out? Mentality is illa.